Amina lived in a small, dusty town called Nambudo, where the sun always seemed to rise too early and set too quickly. Every morning she woke up before dawn, tied her old wrapper around her waist, and carried her little daughter, Zuri, on her back. Life was not easy. Since her husband left a year ago, she had learned to survive on her own. She sold vegetables at the market, fetched water from the river, and cooked whatever little she could find. Yet every night she looked at her sleeping daughter and whispered, "We will be fine, my child. I promise." Amina was known in the town for her quiet strength. She did not talk much, but her eyes showed kindness. Still, behind her calm face she carried deep pain. People sometimes whispered about her when she passed by. Some pitied her, others judged her. They said things like, "A young woman like her, alone with a baby, what future does she have?" Amina heard them, but she never replied. Her focus was Zuri, her only reason to smile. One afternoon, when the heat was heavy and the streets were quiet, Amina was at her small stall in the market. She had only a few tomatoes and onions left. As she packed her basket, a car stopped nearby. It was a shiny silver car, something rare in Nambudo. From it stepped a tall man in a neat shirt and dark trousers. He looked different from anyone she had seen in the town. The man smiled warmly and asked, "Madam, can I buy some water?" Amina nodded shyly and pointed to a small shop nearby. But the man, seeing her hesitation, walked over to her stall and said, "You sell vegetables, don't you? These look fresh." She smiled faintly and replied, "Yes, I try to sell what I can." He bought everything she had without bargaining and paid her double the price. Amina was surprised. The man introduced himself as Daniel. He said he was from the city but came to Nambudo for business. He told her she had a nice smile and that she should be proud of how hard she worked. Amina didn't know how to answer, but his words felt kind. When he left, she stood quietly for a moment, wondering why his voice lingered in her mind. Over the next few weeks, Daniel returned often. He always came with a friendly smile and asked about her day. Sometimes he brought small gifts, a packet of sugar, a bar of soap, or new shoes for little Zuri. The townspeople started to notice and whispered again. "Who is this city man always visiting Amina?" they said. But Amina ignored them. For the first time in a long while, someone made her feel seen. One evening, Daniel waited for her at the end of the market road. The sky was turning orange and Zuri was asleep on her back. "Amina," he said softly, "you work so hard. You deserve more. I can help you. You and your daughter could come to the city with me. You don't have to struggle like this." Amina froze. The city? She had never dreamed of leaving Nambudo. Yet, Daniel's words were gentle and full of promise. She looked down at Zuri sleeping peacefully and said quietly, "You would take care of her too?" Daniel smiled and nodded. "Of course. I will love her like my own." That night, Amina could not sleep. She sat outside her small house, watching the moon. She thought about her life, the loneliness, the hunger, the pain of being forgotten. Daniel's words replayed in her mind. Maybe, just maybe, this was a chance for a better life. The next day, Daniel returned. He brought food, milk, and a soft blanket for Zuri. They sat under the mango tree and he told her stories about the city, the tall buildings, the bright lights, and the people who never seemed to stop moving. Amina listened, her heart swelling with hope. She imagined herself in those streets, walking proudly, no longer called the poor woman from the market. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel's visits became part of her life. He helped her repair the roof when it leaked, carried water when her back hurt, and made Zuri laugh with silly faces. Amina began to believe that maybe he was the answer to her prayers. She found herself smiling more, even singing softly while she worked. One evening as the sun set, Daniel took her hand. "Amina," he said, "you don't belong in this hard life. Let me take care of you. I can give you comfort, peace, and love." Amina looked at him with wide eyes. "Do you really mean that?" she whispered. "I do," he said firmly. "But you must trust me completely." Those words echoed in her heart. Trust me completely. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that someone truly cared. That night she held Zuri close. The little girl slept soundly, her tiny hand clutching her mother's wrapper. Amina kissed her forehead and whispered, "Maybe soon we will have a better life." But deep inside, a small voice of doubt whispered back. It asked her if she truly knew Daniel, the man from the city with kind eyes and smooth words. Still, Amina pushed the thought away. She had lived in pain for too long, and hope, even if fragile, was too precious to let go. The days that followed felt brighter. Daniel began visiting her home more often. He brought fruits, bread, and even helped her set up a new stall in a better part of the market. The other women watched and smiled knowingly. Some warned her quietly, saying, "Be careful, city men are not always what they seem." But Amina was too happy to listen. For the first time in years she felt special. When Daniel laughed with her or carried Zuri in his arms, she imagined a family again, something she thought she would never have. She started dreaming of a small house in the city, a place where Zuri would go to school and she would cook dinner for a man who loved her. As the sun went down one quiet evening, Daniel promised her, "Soon I'll take you both to the city. You'll see how good life can be." Amina smiled, her eyes shining with tears of hope. For her, this was not just love, it was the dream of a new beginning. She believed that maybe the pain of her past was finally over, and that destiny had given her another chance. She looked at Zuri sleeping beside her and whispered, "Your life will be better, my little one. I will make sure of it." Outside, the moon rose high above Nambudo, bathing their small home in silver light, a quiet promise that everything was about to change. Weeks passed, and Amina's life seemed to change faster than she could understand. Daniel, the man who had once filled her days with laughter and warmth, began to show another side of himself. At first it was small things, a sigh when Zuri cried too long, a frown when Amina's clothes smelled of cooking smoke, or silence when she spoke about her dreams. But slowly the man who once brought her gifts now brought her worry. One morning, while Amina fed Zuri porridge, Daniel stood at the door watching them. "Amina," he said suddenly, "you work too hard. You look tired. Maybe you should send your daughter to your mother for some time. It would help you rest." Amina looked up, surprised. "Send Zuri away? But she is still small." "She needs me," she said softly. Daniel smiled, but his eyes were cold. "I'm not saying forever. Just for a while. You and I could have more time together. A baby always crying around us, it makes everything difficult." Amina looked at her daughter. Zuri was smiling, her tiny hands reaching for her mother's face. The thought of sending her away felt like pulling out her own heart. "She is my child," Amina whispered. "I can manage." But Daniel pressed on. "Amina, you must think of your future. If you want a better life, you have to make some sacrifices. Your mother can take care of her. It's only for a short time." His tone was gentle, but his eyes were firm, almost demanding. Amina felt torn in two. She had always prayed for love, for a man who would take care of her. And now that she had one, she was afraid to lose him. She thought of the long, lonely nights she had spent before he came. Maybe he was right. Maybe sending Zuri to her mother's house for a while was not so bad. That night she could not sleep. She watched Zuri lying next to her, the little girl's chest rising and falling with each soft breath. Amina touched her cheek gently and whispered, "You are my heart, my little one. I will never leave you for long." The next morning, Amina packed a small bag with Zuri's clothes, a blanket and her favorite wooden toy. Her heart felt heavy. When Daniel saw her preparing, he smiled. "You are doing the right thing," he said. "You'll see, everything will be easier." Amina said nothing. She wrapped Zuri on her back and began the long walk to the bus station. The sun was hot and the road was dusty. Zuri clapped her small hands, unaware of what was happening. Amina's heart twisted with every step. At the bus stop, people were already waiting, traders, mothers and old men carrying baskets. Amina bought a ticket to her mother's village. She stood by the road, holding Zuri close, trying not to cry. When the bus arrived, she climbed in and found a seat by the window. Zuri sat on her lap, playing with her mother's necklace. Amina stared out of the window, her mind full of noise. She remembered how her mother had warned her once, "A man who loves you will love your child too." But she told herself Daniel just needed time. Maybe once he saw how peaceful life could be, he would accept Zuri completely. When the bus reached her mother's village, Amina stepped off, her legs trembling. The small mud house stood under the big mango tree just as she remembered. Her mother, Mama Chiku, came out, wiping her hands on her wrapper. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Amina? You came without telling me?" she said, then saw the sadness in her daughter's face. Amina forced a smile. "Mama, I brought Zuri to stay with you for some time. I found work in town and I'll visit often." Mama Chiku frowned. "Work or a man?" she asked quietly. Amina looked away. "Please, Mama. Just take care of her. I'll come back soon." Mama Chiku sighed but took the child in her arms. Zuri laughed and reached for her grandmother's necklace. "She is growing fast," Mama said softly. "But Amina, don't forget, no man can fill the space of a child." Amina nodded, but her heart was breaking. As she said goodbye, Zuri reached out, her tiny hands stretching toward her mother. "Mama. Mama," she cried. The sound pierced Amina's heart. The bus began to move. Amina pressed her face against the window, tears streaming down her cheeks. Zuri was still crying, running after the bus, her grandmother trying to hold her back. That sound, her daughter's cry, stayed with Amina long after the village disappeared behind her. When she returned to Nambudo, Daniel was waiting for her. He greeted her with a smile and held her hand. "Now you look free," he said. "We can enjoy life." Amina tried to smile, but her chest felt empty. She nodded and said softly, "Yes, Daniel." But that night, as she lay in bed, the silence of the house felt heavy. She missed the sound of Zuri's laughter, her small hands pulling at her hair, her soft breathing beside her at night. Daniel noticed her sadness. "You miss her," he said casually. "You will see her again soon. Don't think too much." But Amina could not stop thinking. Every evening she stared at the small toy Zuri had left behind, a little wooden cow with one broken horn. Sometimes she held it close, whispering her daughter's name. Days turned into weeks. Daniel seemed happy, taking her to new places, buying her clothes, introducing her to his friends. He treated her kindly, but she felt a growing space between them, a silence that grew louder each day. One night, Amina sat alone outside looking at the stars. The air was cool and the town was quiet. She whispered to herself, "Was this love worth my child's tears?" She remembered how Zuri had cried, reaching for her through the bus window. That memory burned inside her, refusing to fade. The next morning Daniel called out, "Amina, are you ready? We're going to the city tomorrow." She turned slowly. "Will Zuri come with us?" He shook his head. "Not yet. Let's settle first." Amina forced a smile, but deep inside, something broke. She realized that every promise Daniel made came with a price, and this time the price was her daughter. That night she could not sleep. She walked to the small shelf where Zuri's toy still sat. She held it in her hands, tears falling silently. The toy smelled faintly of home, of the village, of her child's laughter. Amina knew then that no love was worth losing her daughter. But for now she said nothing. She would wait, she told herself. Wait for the right time to make things right. As the moon rose high over Nambudo, Amina sat alone in the quiet room, holding the small wooden toy close to her heart, whispering softly, "I'll come back for you, my baby. I promise." Days passed slowly for Amina. The mornings no longer brought joy and the evenings felt empty. Daniel, who once filled her world with laughter and sweet words, was changing again, this time faster than before. He no longer waited for her after work. He no longer called her "my love," in the soft voice that once made her heart race. At first, Amina told herself he was just busy. He had told her once, "Life in the city moves fast. You must learn to be patient." So she waited, one day, then two, then a week. But his messages became shorter, his visits fewer. When he did come, he stayed only for a short while. He no longer looked at her with warmth. Instead, he scrolled through his phone or talked about the city. "You wouldn't understand," he would say when she asked questions. Amina tried to smile and act strong, but deep inside she was breaking. Every night, she sat by the window waiting to hear his footsteps. But most nights there was only silence. She began to remember Zuri more, her soft laugh, her warm hands, the way she said "Mama" in her sleepy voice. One afternoon, Amina went to the market to buy food. As she stood near the fruit stall, she overheard two women talking. One of them said, "Have you heard about Daniel? He is seeing a lady from the city, a rich one. They go everywhere together." Amina froze. Her heart started to pound. "Daniel?" she asked quietly. The women looked at her, surprised. "Yes, Daniel from the town. The one who drives that blue car," one woman said. "He is always with a new woman now." Amina's hands shook. She forced a smile, paid for her fruits and walked away. Her legs felt weak. The world around her seemed to blur. She walked home slowly, her thoughts heavy and painful. When she reached her small house, she sat on the bed and stared at the wall. Her chest felt tight. "It can't be true," she whispered. But deep down she knew it was. The signs had been there, the cold eyes, the distance, the excuses. That night, Daniel didn't come home. Amina waited, watching the clock tick. At midnight she sent him a message, "Are you okay? I am worried." The message was delivered, but there was no reply. She sent another one. Still nothing. Tears filled her eyes. She remembered the day he had smiled and told her to send Zuri away. "We'll have a better life," he had said. She had believed him. She had given up the most precious thing in her life for him, her daughter. As the night grew darker, she lay on the bed and covered her face. Silent tears ran down her cheeks. Her heart ached with regret. Every memory of Zuri came rushing back, her small hands clutching at her clothes, her cries as the bus left the village, her laughter echoing in Amina's mind. Amina whispered, "I left my baby for a man who doesn't even care." The next morning she went to Daniel's place. She waited outside his small rented room. When he finally arrived, he looked surprised to see her. "Amina, what are you doing here?" he asked coldly. "I wanted to see you." "You haven't come in days," she said softly. Daniel sighed. "Amina, you're making things hard. I told you I'm busy." "Busy with who?" she asked, her voice trembling. He looked away. "Don't start this," he said, then turned to walk inside. Amina's tears fell. "Daniel, please just tell me. Is there someone else?" He stopped, his shoulders stiff. "Maybe. Maybe I need someone different. You're too quiet, too emotional. I need peace." His words cut through her like a knife. She stood frozen, unable to speak. Daniel shrugged. "You should go back to your mother. Maybe that's where you belong." He walked away, leaving her standing in the doorway. Amina's heart shattered. She could hardly breathe. She turned and walked slowly down the dusty road, her steps heavy. Her dreams, the ones filled with love and family, faded with each step. When she reached her house, she sat on the floor, holding Zuri's small wooden toy in her hands. She ran her fingers over it again and again, tears falling on the old wood. "I lost everything for him," she whispered. "Everything." That night she didn't light the lamp. She sat in the dark, listening to the wind outside. It whistled through the cracks in the walls, sounding almost like a child crying. The sound made her heart ache even more. She thought of her mother's words, spoken long ago under the mango tree, "A man who loves you will never ask you to lose what you love most." Amina now understood. Daniel had never loved her. He had only wanted her to change her life to fit his own. The next morning she woke up feeling empty but clear. She looked around her small room. The clothes Daniel had bought no longer mattered. The gifts, the promises, all of it was nothing. She packed her small bag. Inside it she placed one dress, a scarf, and the little wooden toy. Then she took a deep breath. She was going back home. As she walked toward the bus station, people moved past her, talking, laughing, living their lives. But for Amina, everything felt quiet, almost sacred. Each step she took away from town felt like a step toward her heart again. When she reached the bus, she looked up at the sky. The sun was rising, painting the clouds gold and pink. It reminded her of mornings with Zuri, when they used to sit outside and her daughter would laugh at the birds. Amina whispered, "I'm coming home, my baby." As the bus began to move, she felt a tear roll down her cheek. But this time it wasn't only from pain. It was from the small spark of strength growing inside her again, a strength she thought she had lost. She knew the road ahead would not be easy. She had to face her mother, her guilt, her child's confusion. But she also knew one thing for sure. She would never again trade love for loneliness disguised as care. The bus rolled on through the dusty road. Amina looked out of the window, her eyes still wet, but her heart slowly healing. She whispered to herself, "Never again." The little wooden toy rested on her lap, a reminder of what love truly meant. The sun rose slowly over the hills of Nambudo, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. Amina stood by her small window, looking out at the quiet street. Her eyes were tired from crying all night, but her heart was calm for the first time in weeks. She had made a decision. She was going home. She packed her small bag, just a few clothes, a scarf, and the little wooden toy Zuri used to play with. She held it for a moment, running her fingers over its smooth edges. "I'm coming for you, my baby," she whispered. Then she wrapped the toy in a cloth and placed it carefully in her bag. The bus station was already busy when she arrived. Men shouted destinations, women carried baskets of fruit, and children ran between the benches. Amina bought a ticket to her mother's village, holding it tightly in her hand like it was her way back to life itself. She sat near the window when the bus started moving. The city slowly disappeared behind her, the noise, the buildings, the streets she had once walked with Daniel. Every mile felt like she was leaving behind a shadow. The road stretched ahead, dusty and long, but she didn't care. She only wanted to see Zuri again. As the bus drove through small towns, Amina thought about her choices. She remembered how Daniel had smiled and promised her love, how he had told her to send her daughter away, and how she had listened, blinded by his sweet words. "I was a fool," she whispered to herself, but she didn't cry this time. She just looked out of the window and watched the trees pass by, their leaves dancing in the wind. After many hours, the bus finally reached her mother's village. Amina stepped down, her feet touching the familiar red soil. The air smelled of earth and cooking fire. Felt like home. She walked quickly down the narrow path that led to her mother's house. Her heart was beating fast. What would her mother say? Would she be angry? Would Zuri still remember her? When she reached the small gate, she stopped. Her eyes filled with tears. There, in the yard, was little Zuri sitting on the ground with a stick, drawing lines in the dust. Her small curls bounced as she laughed softly to herself. Amina's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't seen her daughter in weeks, but it felt like years. She took one step forward, then another. The dry leaves crunched under her feet. Zuri looked up. For a moment, she blinked, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then, with a joyful cry, she dropped her stick and ran as fast as her tiny legs could carry her. Mama? Amina fell to her knees just as Zuri reached her. She opened her arms wide, and the little girl threw herself into them. Amina held her tightly, pressing her face into her daughter's hair. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, "I will never leave you again. Never." Zuri giggled, not understanding the pain in her mother's voice, only feeling her warmth. She wrapped her little arms around Amina's neck and said softly, "Mama home." Amina nodded, holding her closer. "Yes, my love. Mama is home." Her mother came out of the house, wiping her hands on her apron. When she saw Amina, she froze for a moment. Then she walked forward slowly, her eyes full of both love and worry. "You came back," she said softly. Amina stood up, still holding Zuri in her arms. "Yes, Mama. I came home. I was blind, but now I see clearly." Her mother sighed deeply, her face softening. She reached out and touched Amina's cheek. "My child, I prayed every night that you would find your way. Love should build you, not break you." Amina's lips trembled. "I thought I was doing the right thing, Mama. I thought if I made him happy we would have a better life. But I was wrong. I lost myself, and almost lost my daughter." Her mother smiled gently and pulled them both into her arms. "Now you know, my daughter, real love never hurts. It never asks you to give away what your heart holds dear." They stood there for a long time, holding each other as the wind moved softly through the trees. Amina could feel the warmth of her mother's embrace and the heartbeat of her daughter against her chest. For the first time in a long while, she felt whole again. That evening, the three of them sat outside under the mango tree. Her mother cooked ugali and beans over the fire while Amina fed Zuri, who was laughing and playing with her cup. The village children ran around, their laughter echoing through the air. Amina watched the sunset, its golden light touching everything around her. She felt peace, a peace she hadn't known for a long time. The sound of crickets filled the air, and her heart whispered a quiet prayer of thanks. Her mother looked at her and said, "You are stronger now. Pain teaches us even when we don't want to learn. But remember, you can always begin again." Amina nodded, smiling softly. "I will never forget, Mama. I have learned my lesson." She turned to look at Zuri, who had fallen asleep in her lap, her tiny hand resting on Amina's arm. The moonlight shone on her little face, and Amina felt tears of joy fill her eyes again. "I almost lost her," she whispered. "But God gave me another chance." Her mother smiled. "Yes, and this time hold her close. The world may offer many things, but nothing is greater than a mother's love." Amina kissed Zuri's forehead and whispered, "I promise, Mama. I will never choose anyone over her again." The night grew quiet and stars filled the sky. The fire crackled softly beside them. Amina leaned against her mother's shoulder, feeling safe, loved, and forgiven. In that peaceful moment, she realized she didn't need fancy promises or city dreams. What she needed, what she had always needed, was right here. Her mother's wisdom, her child's love, and her own strength. As the wind brushed against her face, Amina whispered, "I'm home," and for the first time in a long time she truly was. The days in the village moved slowly, filled with the sound of birds, the chatter of women, and the laughter of children. Amina had been home for several months now, and life had begun to settle into something peaceful. She woke up every morning before sunrise, tied her headscarf, and started her small sewing work under the mango tree beside her mother's house. At first she only mended torn clothes for neighbors, a loose hem here, a ripped pocket there. But soon more people began to come. They liked the neatness of her stitches and the care she put into her work. With each passing day, Amina's small corner became busier. One morning an old woman brought her a bag of fabric. "Amina," she said with a smile, "you have magic in your hands. I want you to make me a new dress for the church meeting." Amina laughed softly and said, "I'll do my best, Mama Lindy." As she worked, little Zuri played nearby, stacking small stones and singing to herself. Every now and then she would look up and call out, "Mama, look at me." Amina would smile and wave, her heart swelling with love. She never grew tired of watching her daughter. In the evenings, Amina and her mother would sit outside with cups of warm tea watching the stars. Her mother would often say, "See how you've changed, my daughter? You were once lost, but now you shine brighter than before." Amina would nod quietly. "I had to lose myself to find who I really am," she would reply. "Now I live for Zuri and for my peace." Word of her sewing spread beyond the village. Women from nearby towns began visiting, bringing their fabrics and stories. Some came not only for clothes but to talk about their marriages, their struggles, their hopes. Amina listened to each one with patience and kindness. One afternoon, a young woman named Nia came to her. She looked sad and tired. "Amina," she said, "I heard what happened to you. My husband also left me. People laugh at me because I raised my child alone. How do you stay strong?" Amina smiled gently. She paused her sewing and looked at Nia. "I stay strong because I have someone to live for," she said, glancing at Zuri. "Pain doesn't mean your story is over. It just means you are being prepared for something better. Don't give up." Nia's eyes filled with tears. She nodded slowly and said, "Thank you. You speak like a mother and a teacher." From that day on, Nia came often. She began helping Amina with the sewing, learning how to cut cloth, thread needles and shape dresses. Soon other women joined too. Amina taught them everything she knew, and in time her small sewing space turned into a place of laughter and sisterhood. The women would sit together for hours, stitching, talking, and encouraging one another. Some brought food to share, others brought stories that made them all laugh. The air around Amina's home was always filled with warmth, the kind that came from shared strength and new beginnings. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, the women finished their work and left, waving goodbye. Amina sat quietly with Zuri on her lap, watching the sky turn golden. Zuri looked up at her mother and said, "Mama, when I grow up, I want to sew like you." Amina kissed her daughter's forehead and smiled. "You can do anything you want, my little one. But promise me one thing, never let anyone make you forget your worth." Zuri nodded, though she was too young to fully understand. But Amina knew that one day, those words would guide her. Time went by, and Amina's life blossomed in ways she had never imagined. Her small tailoring business grew stronger, and her bond with Zuri grew even deeper. Together they built a life filled with love, peace, and honesty. Sometimes, when she sewed late into the night, she thought about the past, about Daniel, about the city, about the choices that once broke her. But instead of pain, she felt gratitude. Without that heartbreak, she might never have found her strength. One day, as she sat in the village market selling her handmade dresses, a woman whispered to her, "People say you are the woman who came back from sadness and turned it into success." Amina laughed softly. "Maybe," she said, "but I only followed the lessons life gave me. Pain teaches if we listen." Her life became a quiet story of change. Mothers told their daughters about her. "She is the woman who chose love over pride," they said. "She is the woman who built herself again." Years later, Zuri grew into a bright, confident girl. She often helped her mother sew and sometimes told her friends proudly, "My mama is strong. She makes people happy with her hands." Whenever Amina heard that, her heart melted. She would look at her daughter and whisper a prayer of thanks. On some evenings, as she sat outside her little sewing place, Amina would tell the young women around her, "I once gave up everything for a man who didn't deserve me. But I learned something: love is not about losing yourself. It's about finding peace in who you are." The women would listen quietly, their eyes filled with respect. As the wind blew gently through the tall grass and the stars appeared one by one, Amina smiled to herself. Her life was not easy, but it was full of lessons, full of love, full of meaning. She had once been lost in the noise of false love, but now she lived in the calm of truth. Her hands, once trembling with pain, now created beauty. Her heart, once broken, now healed others. Every morning when she opened her small sewing shop, she would whisper softly, "This is my new life. This is my peace." The villagers admired her courage and her quiet strength. They often said, "Amina is proof that a woman's strength is greater than her sorrow." And as for Zuri, she grew up proud of her mother, knowing that behind her gentle smile was a story of pain, healing, and rebirth. Amina had once lived for a man. Now she lived for her daughter, her dreams, and her peace, and that made her richer than she had ever been.